Hey guys, welcome back to Daska Discusses. Well, it's been nearly a couple of weeks since the Cobra Kai Season 3 came out, and I managed to binge watch it over 2 nights. Now, let's do this. I've got a Season 3 review of Cobra Kai. Let's do it. Now, I'm going to break this down episode by episode, so just warning you guys out there, there will be severe spoilers. So let's do this. No mercy. Now, episode 1... Again, good intro to the season. I've got some notes here. Miguel and his coma. Johnny, the introduction of that. He's upset about what's happened, trying to get him out of the coma, trying to help the mum. Obviously, Johnny's, Miguel's mum's really upset. Tori and Sam, the aftermath of the school brawl. We've got the intro to Daniel again and what's happening. There's a bit of talk about Robbie, but really, it's all about Miguel and being in the coma and what Johnny's going to do to try and get him out, obviously. So it was okay. A good start, right? Episode 2. Now, Kreese and the Cobra Kai. Obviously, Sensei Kreese trying to test these Cobra Kai students he's got this part with like a mouse, and he's like, whoever's like, the strongest willed would feed this mouse to this snake. Pretty creepy as well, but pretty full on for like this type of show. Miguel wakes up, which is another big thing. Also, what my favorite part of episode 2 was the flashback to like 1960s or 1950s where we see a younger Kreese working in a diner. And originally I thought that this jock guy was going to be Kreese, but it wasn't. It was actually just the bus boy. And then he meets this girl, Betsy, which was very interesting. So yeah, that was episode 2 for me. Not bad. Episode 3. Again, I felt that this episode built up for future episodes. It focuses a lot on Daniel's business, Johnny trying to get cash for Miguel's operation, which was interesting. And what I found was the last scene in Tokyo was the big one, because I'm like, okay, Daniel's going over to Japan. I remember seeing in the trailer something about him going to Japan and running into a particular someone from Karate Kid 2. When's that going to happen? And that's what leads me to episode 4. Episode 4, great episode. Some stuff happening at Cobra Kai with Johnny and his son Robbie, but the best parts was Daniel in Okinawa finds Yuki. Great reunion. She reads a letter from Mr. Miyagi that Mr. Miyagi wrote on the week that he died to Yuki's auntie. It's a very moving scene, and it's probably one of my favorite scenes of the whole series, where Yuki reads that letter that Mr. Miyagi sent to Yuki's auntie. It felt like Mr. Miyagi was actually there in the episode. You know what I mean? Like, it was a really emotional kind of part, and it really ends pretty epic with Yuki telling Daniel, I got someone who could show you around, and it's Chosen or Hosen from Karate Kid 2. I thought that was pretty epic. When I saw him, I'm like, oh, here we go. Now, episode 5. My favorite episode by far, the opening, showing the fight between Daniel and Chosen from Karate Kid 2 was pretty cool, and you got to see some different angles. They spend the day together, which is interesting. We get Kreese meets Robbie, very interesting part of the story. Could Robbie actually turn, is what I thought. Back to Chosen and Daniel, going through all the actual Miyagi-Do things, the scrolls. Daniel isn't allowed to look at them because he's a foreigner. Found that interesting. Daniel not knowing all of the secrets to Miyagi-Do, that's what Chosen tells him. And it leads to an epic ending for that episode, where it's pretty cool how Chosen, basically, he pours his heart out and he tells him that, he was thinking of ending his life about what happened when he was dishonored and everything like that. But then he teaches him, the offensive part of Miyagi-Do, which was really cool. Miguel gets taken to a concert. He's in a wheelchair with Johnny. His foot begins moving. And then we've got a golf and stuff brawl between Daniel's daughter Sam, her friends. Hawk breaks Dimitri's arm. Sam sees Dimitri's arm get broken by Hawk, which was pretty full on. I thought, wow, this is really getting pretty full on at this point. And Ali messages Johnny back on Facebook. So that was episode 5, my favorite episode of the series. Episode 6, Johnny is still with Miguel, trying to get him to walk, trying to get him to train. We've got another Vietnam flashback, was the best. Kreese doesn't want to blow up his fellow soldiers, and then they get captured. I really like these Vietnam flashbacks that Kreese has. It's very interesting. Again, with this episode, not too much happened. It was building on to future episodes, which episode 7, again, another filler episode for future episodes. Sam and Daniel bonding, some good throwbacks to part 3, and Daniel's fear of Barnes, because, obviously Sam has got a real distinct fear of Tori. She's pretty crazy and she's quite menacing. So Daniel kind of mentions her about how Mr. Miyagi got Daniel through that fight in Karate Kid 3, which, again, I think is probably the worst fight in the history of the movies. Johnny makes a new dojo called Eagle Fang, and Kreese rocks up and gives him an offer. This was, even though I said there was not much that happened, it was still actually pretty cool to see that happen, how he makes his own dojo and then Kreese rocks up. So it wasn't too bad, but again, these next 3 episodes, this is where it gets a bit interesting. Episode 8 starts with Johnny and Daniel both arriving to pick up Robbie. So we haven't heard much from Robbie in a few episodes. I haven't really mentioned it, but he does go to like juvie and gets into a few fights, defends himself, and he's basically doesn't trust Johnny or Daniel in a way. And Johnny and Daniel are arguing and fighting over who's actually beneficial to be helping Robbie. Daniel did turn him over to the cops, but there was a reason why. That was in a previous episode as well. But anyway, Johnny and Daniel, Kreese give some speeches about the All Valley tournament is threatened because of all that's happening. So they go to the council, they have a bit of a chat, and Johnny, Daniel, and Kreese give some speeches. Miguel gets up and speaks just as the council says, "No, we're definitely cancelling the All Valley," and then the tournament is back on, which is really cool. Robbie catches Sam and Miguel together after all this happens, and he ends up back at Cobra Kai in the last scene of that episode. So, Robbie had this thing about trusting Sam, and he sees Sam and Miguel together, and it just kind of like he loses it. Episode 9. Finally, we get to see Elizabeth Shue come back as Ali. They go for lunch, some good moments. Robbie steals the snake for Cobra Kai and proves his worth. There's like a scene where he has to go into a zoo and like steal a snake. Again, this episode was a bit of filler, a lot of things that led to episode 10, which is what I'm going to be talking about now, the final episode. Now, bear with me. This episode begins with a flashback in Vietnam where Kreese is forced to fight his captain over a pit full of snakes, which is quite creepy as well. Now, what's interesting is that I think originally Terry Silver was meant to get up and fight, but then Kreese gets up and takes, he says, "No, I'll do it." So he gets up and fights his captain over this pit of snakes. This kind of like flashes back in between flashes back from the past to the present, where Daniel, Ali, and Johnny are at Tall Oaks, which again is like another reference to part 1. And Daniel's wife comes in and they have a good chat about how Daniel and Ali broke up and the reasons why. Some real funny moments here, some good nostalgia, some good parts. And then at the same time, you've got a big finale of the series, the big fight that happens at the Daniel's house, where Sam is there with Miyagi-Do, they're there with Eagle Fang, and they're trying to join forces. Then all of a sudden you've got Cobra Kai who rock up. There's a big huge brawl that happens, a lot of violence, a lot of fights, and then all of a sudden Hawk kind of like just changes his mind and decides to fight the Cobra Kai after a few flashbacks about what Johnny told him about how he made him, it wasn't Kreese. And I really like that. He gains a conscience and he helps out Dimitri, who was going to get his other arm broken by another guy from Cobra Kai. Johnny arrives. Now, after all that happens, Johnny arrives at Cobra Kai, finds Robbie training with Kreese. A fight happens. Daniel rocks up, fights Kreese. Now, the fight between Johnny and Kreese was pretty cool, even though Martin Cove, the guy who plays Kreese, is pretty old. It still held up pretty well for me. That whole symbolism between like the teacher and student was pretty cool. But then I think it really picked up when Daniel rocked up and they started fighting, and then he used Chosen's moves that he learnt from Okinawa or Miyagi-Do back with Chosen, and it gets to that point where Daniel's ready to like just basically do what he did in part 2, live or die, and then it kind of stops. Other people rock up, and then Kreese just basically says, "I think the best call would be to settle this old-fashioned way with a tournament." And then it flashes back to Kreese in this pit where he basically He knocks his captain over. His captain's sitting there hanging over this pit, and there's the choppers come in, and they're all free, and he's got a chance to actually show mercy and lift his captain up from this kind of like ledge, and he lets him go, which I thought was like pretty amazing and pretty disturbing at the same time. But you kind of like get the understanding of Kreese's character for that. At the end of that, near the end of the episode, we've got Kreese looking at a photo of obviously him and his war buddies, and he picks up the phone, and well, before that you've got Terry Silver telling him in Vietnam that whatever he needs, he'll help him out. So I'm like, okay, here we go. Season 4, what's going to happen? Kreese makes the call. He's looking at the photo. It's obvious. Terry Silver's going to be in Season 4, hopefully. Let's hope they get the original actor, because I love that guy. I can't remember his name, but yeah. The final scene shows Eagle, Fang, and Miyagi-Do assembled, ready for training, as Daniel and Johnny both bow to them and each other. That's the end of the series. Now, my overall thoughts of the series. Look, I went through each episode, and I'm telling you now, I think this was a much stronger season than Season 2. Why? I just think the Kreese flashbacks really did it for me, and the stakes have been raised a lot in this series as well. I know the stakes got raised in Season 2 with Miguel getting his back broken and being in hospital. That was really full on, right? But I just think there's so much more to Kreese and the Cobra Kai characters and storyline that's coming. And I think the creators have actually said that they're not going to stop after next season. So I'm really interested to see what happens here. And even though Karate Kid 3 wasn't the best, I just think Terry Silver's character has got a lot to offer. Are they going to bring back that Barnes guy from Karate Kid 3? Probably not. But I'm really looking forward to Season 4. This season beats Season 2. Doesn't beat Season 1 though. In terms of rating, I would probably give this like an 8 out of 10. It lost a couple of points because some episodes were just a tad slow. But again, if you're a fan of Karate Kid, if you're a fan of Cobra Kai, even if you haven't started watching Cobra Kai, you really should get onto it if you're a fan of Karate Kid. Because if you haven't, then what are you actually waiting for? And if you're someone who's like coming into this fresh, then I would say definitely watch Karate Kid 1, 2, 3 before you watch all this. Because I think Cobra Kai, I was watching it back when it was on YouTube Red. It's actually come so far, and it's actually becoming one of the great shows on Netflix and on, streaming services. For something that was on YouTube Red, right, where people were laughing when I was telling them, hey, guys, you got to check out Cobra Kai. And they're like, I'm not getting YouTube Red, what for? Only when it came onto Netflix, people started to take a lot more notice. But you know what? It actually did well on YouTube Red, which is why it got that offer from Netflix to go on to switch over. I think it was a really well done season. I hope you enjoyed this episode breakdown and my thoughts on Season 3 Cobra Kai. Let me know what you thought in the comments, guys. Please leave a like if you want to leave a like if you like the video. And don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date with my videos. I'll see you guys on the next episode of Daska Discusses. Boom.